Let's talk with Steve Cody, CEO and co-founder of Bunking.com, a shared marketplace which safely connects solo travelers with unique experiences in the outdoor industry. I'm Alex Burkett, and this is the Outdoor Alliances podcast. Steve, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for having me on, Alex.
Why don't we start with just a quick introduction? When did you found the company, and sort of what was your background, and how did you come to create Bunking.com?
Yeah, probably like about 2.5 years ago, two of my kids, so 23 and a 26-year-old, had a great idea. They were going to head out to this surf town at the other end of the country. They were going to stay there for 3 months, live there, surf, work, do all that until they found out it was about $6,000 a month was the cheapest place they could find, which they could not afford. So I said, well, rent the place out and then go on Craigslist, go on Facebook Marketplace, rent out spots on the floor, the couch, whatever you have to other people. And, you get enough people in there, you could actually live for free. And then my daughter kind of looks at me and she's like, okay, well, how are people going to pay? And what about axe murders? So those were her concerns. And the safety part was obviously important. So we went online and started looking around to say, well, if you're traveling with strangers, living with strangers, like, how do you vet them? How do you know, if they're not axe murderers? And we couldn't find anything. So that was, to me, really shocking. So that was, kind of another thing that came along. And my daughter's a TikTok influencer. And she started saying, well, if I'm going to live with strangers for 3 months, I want to do collaborative living. And I'm like, what the hell is collaborative living? And then she showed me these TikTok houses in LA and, where TikTokers get together and they live and collaborate and create content. And I thought, man, that's really cool. And then my son, he's a product manager in tech. He's like, hang on a second. Like, I never have an office to go back to. So, if I'm going to live with strangers for 3 months, I want him to be from tech. I want to learn. I want to mentor. So then I started thinking, like, this is like themed living. So kind of put all the problems together, like 2 people couldn't afford to travel on their own. So that's kind of scary. Then you had a safety issue, which there didn't seem to be a resolution for. And then there seemed to be this kind of need that I had never thought of to be connected with like-minded people. So it was like those 3 things kind of coming together all at once. The light bulb kind of came off and we started bunking.
Why don't we start with, as you mentioned, sort of that process as a consumer. If I'm somebody who is a solo traveler, even like myself, somebody in my early 20s, I'm single, love to travel, but it's expensive and I have certain interests and things that I enjoy. How do I go about, figuring out who may be the people in my community, and what's the process from, okay, I want to get onto the platform and go, to almost getting through and booking a bunking experience and actually going on one of these trips?
One example I like to use is my other son. He does these marathons, like 100 kilometers or 200 kilometers up mountains and down mountains and that. So he loves to go to these extreme events, but he can't always afford to go because he's a solo traveler and it's really expensive, unless you want to stay in a tent, but then you're kind of, you're not really ready for the big run. So he misses out on a lot of these because he can't afford to go. So with bunking, he could go on and it's free. You go on the platform, you sign up, and as a user, he could look to see if anybody else has posted a trip or a trip idea for that specific marathon. So other people that are looking, for people like him. And if he can't find anything, then he can do one of 2 things. He could, book a spot and post it on Bunking and say, I've got this, I've Airbnb'd this place. I'm looking for 4 more people to share the costs with. So that would be a planned trip. And he'd curate it, if he wants, maybe it's all male or, if it was all female, age, languages. So you kind of curate the people you want to live with. They're probably the most important thing, is just people that are going to the marathon. At least you're all going to bed at the same time and you're probably waking up at the same time. So that's kind of the one idea. But maybe he's not ready to commit. Maybe he doesn't want to book that Airbnb, and he's just looking to find people that maybe, if he finds enough people, then he'll commit to getting someplace. So he can post a trip idea. And it's, I'm going to this marathon. I'm looking to connect with 3 or 4 more people. I want to rent this place. It's going to be about this much. I want to stay, from Monday or from Friday to Monday. So whatever those parameters are, and people can join the conversation and say, Brad, I'd rather stay this time, or I'd rather stay in a fancier place or whatever, right? So the trip idea just kind of creates this more collaboration environment, and it helps de-risk the whole thing.
One of the things that I liked as well was that collaboration, and you don't really have to have the commitment. You can sort of just put it out there and see who is this community, and is there a community here for this particular trip. So I liked that, and it was something that was different than any other platform or experience that I had seen.
Thank you. Yeah. And if you look at it, like, who are we helping? I think we're helping the organizers, whoever's organizing the race, because they're losing out on this market completely. Solo travelers, they can't afford to go. So the fact that bunking is there and helps people to connect for overnight accommodations will probably mean they'll have more people going to their race. Brad can go to more races. He can meet more like-minded people, which, at the end of the day, creates a much better experience. So, we think bunking can help in a lot of ways.
One of the other things that I liked is, as a trip organizer, and if I wanted to go on there and set it up and start that, there wasn't a lot that I had to do logistically to actually organize the trip, if you want to call it. Bunking takes care of the vetting of the people, taking care of the payment options. Can you talk a little bit about how that works? And maybe we'll touch a little bit more on the safety and the vetting now, because I know that was something that really stuck out to me, and something that you guys are really taking seriously, and it's core to the mission and what you're trying to build on the platform, is making it a safe and inclusive space.
Huge. And it goes back to my daughter's concern, right? Like, how do I know if it's an axe murder? So, I'll give you maybe an example. Is my daughter wants to rent an RV, and she wants to go across the country. She wants to do it with other TikTokers so they can get some awesome content and things like that. So she can go on to bunking and she can create this planned trip. I'm going in an RV. I'm looking for 3 other TikTokers, and maybe she wants to make a little bit of money doing it. Maybe she's subsidizing what she's doing, or maybe she's just splitting the cost. So totally up to the organizer. So she knows that anybody would request to join her trip, so she can look at the person's profile. So maybe she wants it to be all female. So if you requested, she would say, sorry, can't go, Alex. It's an all-female trip. Or it could be she wants to curate a certain age group, or people that wake up early, like to go to bed early. So however she wants to curate it, she curates it. She knows that anybody that communicates with her or requests to join a trip has been vetted. When you sign up, we're vetting, making sure they're real people. That's like level 1 of vetting. We take it like 1,000 steps further, where we say, if my daughter was really concerned with safety, she could make it a rule that to join her trip, you need to have a successful criminal background check done. I don't know of anybody else who does this. We have a partnership with Sterling. So the person would just go to their bunking profile, request a criminal background check. If it came back, that you're all good, you would get a badge that sits on your profile for a year. So now my daughter, that's so she knows at least it's like that extra level of safety. Anybody that's coming on that RV trip with her at least doesn't have a criminal record, right? And so I think that goes a long way.
Right. And I know even once somebody joins the trip and the trip's been planned, you have, let's say, 4 or 5 people in it. It becomes a community where people can chat with each other, coordinate the trip plans, do all of that. So it really becomes that space that's a safe spot to talk. People can organize that plans. And that's really, I think, the value in this, is how you're connecting people with different interests and the facilitation of this whole process.
Really good point. Yeah, Alex, we almost took the view to say, my daughter's on the couch. She's never traveled solo. She has this great idea, wants to rent an RV, connect with TikTokers, and go across the country. While she's sitting on the couch thinking about that, what are the anxieties that she has in doing this? And with bunking, we try to think about that journey and how do we reduce those anxieties? And I think one of the anxieties is going to be, who else is going? Like, do I only meet them when we pick them up in the RV? Or, so with bunking, as soon as you're accepted into a trip, you become part of a chat group for that trip. So now you're meeting everybody via chat. You can look at everybody's profile. You can start to have conversations, but that wildly reduces the anxiety, because at least now you know who you're going on a trip with. And it probably creates more excitement. We kind of call it the tribe building kind of, phase of bunking. It's really when you start connecting, and then even post trip, you still have this chat that you can communicate with and share pictures or do whatever. But it's really thinking about that journey. Another important thing, and it goes back to safety, but it's that journey of solo travelers. A lot of them end up going to hostels. And when we interviewed women that go to hostels early on, 60% of people who stay in hostels are women. They don't stay in hostels because they love hostels. They stay there often because there's safety in numbers, right? Which is kind of not good. The thing they're most anxious about when we ask them is, who are they sleeping next to? They have no idea, right? Until they put their head down and whoever's sleeping beside them, they have no idea. With bunking, if somebody else is like, if you're in a shared space, you can actually see the people's profiles that have booked beds like next to you in the same room or whatever. So you get to make a choice. Yes, I want to book that bed, or I don't want to book that bed. I want to go to a different room or whatever it is. But again, it's about safety and reducing anxiety.
And as we talk about these trips, Steve, what are you seeing is the most popular type of accommodation option and where people are actually staying? I know I mentioned in the introduction, these are a lot of times unique places. They're really cool locations, really cool, different places to stay. What have you seen so far from trips that have been booked on, how people are staying?
Yeah, so for us, it's still early days. We launched our beta about 3 months ago. We'll be in beta for another 3 months. So we do zero advertising. Everything that happens on bunking is totally organic. And we've got a couple of go-to-market tests that we've done. So we started with tours and safaris, getting, seeing if they'd be interested in coming on the platform. Absolutely, they want to be on the platform. They love the way the booking experience works, and we're adding like a book now, pay later feature and a trip cancellation feature. And so these are all tools that a small operator doesn't get to have access to, right, to compete with the big guys. So we're going to be giving them those tools. We've got a lot of, next was like retreats. We've got quite a few retreats starting to come on. Third phase is kind of what we look at is demand density. So thinking about like South by Southwest or the Super Bowl, or even my son's example of a marathon, right, where there's a bunch of people coming together and there's sometimes not enough accommodations, or accommodations get to be too expensive, where bunking can really help. So that's kind of that third wave is where we're starting to see some real traction with bunking. So in like busy situations where people, that's where they need bunking.
Right. And I know some people probably might be thinking so far, platform sounds great, but how are you guys making money with this? So can you talk a little bit about how that process works and, maybe touch on how the payment process works if somebody organizes that trip? And I know one of those anxieties might be, how do I safely collect payments from the other people who are on the trip with me if I'm the organizer? And how do I know that, these people aren't going to bail and I'm going to be left with a big bill and people who bailed on my trip, and now I'm alone with a large bill in a place that I've never been before? And I know you guys are doing a lot to prevent that and make it a convenient experience for people booking these trips.
Yeah, when we thought about, how do people book and how do we protect people? So we thought about how do we protect both the organizer and the guests? Because I think often the guest, and I mean, you see it all the time on Facebook groups where there's a lot of kind of scams happening, right? People wire me some money, whatever it is, and I'll be here when you show up, and there's nobody there when they show up. So with bunking, the organizer sets the rate. It's a nightly rate. You can have a minimum stay or however you want to set it up whenever you're building your trip. And the guest, when they book, they pay 50% up front, the other 50% 3 days before the trip happens. And we hold that money until the day after the guest shows up. And the day after the guest shows up, we pay it out to the trip organizer. So that it protects, at least the organizer knows they're getting paid, and the guest knows that their money is safe, that when they do show up to wherever they're going, there's very likely going to be somebody there and it's for real, right? So there's no motivation to do anything but that. So we think that's really important. Like I said, we're adding trip cancellation insurance. Again, that protects the organizer and it protects the guest. Right. So if something happens to the guest, at least nobody's out. Trip cancellation will cover, for both the guest and the organizer. So I think that's going to be huge. In terms of how we make money, everything is free. You can create a trip idea, you can create a planned trip, you can come on the platform, you can sign up, everything's free. The only time we make money is on a successful booking. So if I'm the organizer and you need to pay me, I'm charging, it's $100 a night and you're staying 5 nights, so it's $500. You're going to pay $550. So it's $500 to me, and then a 10% platform fee, which goes to bunking. So 10% is of the booking value is charged to the guest. The organizer never pays anything. The only thing the organizer ever pays is our cost on the credit card processing fees. So typically 2.9%, and everything is done through Stripe. So, so we take that out when we pay you.
Right. And I know, Steve, this whole conversation and why I found your platform so interesting with this new marketplace that you're creating is the idea of appealing to solo travelers. It's something with, being in the outdoor and the camping industry. We always talk about these different reports that come out, research that shows, millennials or different types of groups camping, what generations are doing it, what are the, by race, by age, by gender. But we never really seem to have the conversation between groups or families, and we sort of leave out solo travelers. At least I found in talking with people, it's not really something that's on their mind as far as marketing, how to appeal to them. And if you're in a particular region or a particular area that, people want to go to, particularly solo travelers who don't have the budget for it, this could be a really great thing for that. So can you maybe just touch on what's some of the data and the research that you're seeing from solo travelers, and maybe what their biggest needs are and what you're trying to help meet? Because I know people just don't consider it, and it's not something that we talk enough about.
Yeah, and you know what? It's really interesting you bring it up, and it's not even something we kind of saw early on. But the more we got into this, the more we saw that, if we think about booking things, the traditional way of booking is, you book things for you and your family. You book things as a group of friends. Post-COVID, we think the next wave of booking is actually bringing together solo travelers into a kind of a group booking experience, which is exactly what bunking does. And, why do we think that's the next wave? I think a lot of it has to do with people's mobility. People's mobility is like it's never been before. We could be great friends or even husband and wife, and you're hybrid work, I'm fully remote, or maybe I have to go into the office 5 days a week. So the traditional way of booking where you knew people and we kind of all had 3 or 4 weeks off a year, whatever it was, we'd kind of schedule around that, and we'd take a trip based on that. That's totally out the window right now. So there's a lot of people kind of saying, hey, I've got some time here, I want to go explore, I want to do things that are on my bucket list. That's a solo traveler, and they can't, it's tough to travel alone. And we think the way kind of bunking's created this experience of connecting with like-minded people, not only will help you save money, but we think you're going to have a better outcome of the whole experience. And, and you'll want to do it more often.
And so on the sort of the owner and operator side, this is something we haven't really touched a lot about. I know you spoke on, safari operators, or maybe people who own resorts or own these, unique accommodations like a cabin in the woods or something like that, that's sort of out in a remote location and just a cool place to go. And hey, we want to disconnect for the weekend and do a, reading retreat out there. And it's people who love that, whatever, if that's the interest group that works, and that's that. What maybe can owners and operators think about? Is there a place for them either on the platform, or what would you recommend? Maybe it's, getting them to connect with organizers and see the value in their location so that the organizer can go on to bunking.com, plan the trip, and get people who are interested in a similar experience to join them.
Yeah, I mean, if you just think, if you own a maybe unique property or even any kind of property, I mean, it happens all day long right now with student living. Think about that cabin in the woods and think about turning it into a more of a themed cabin. Could be board games, could be video games, could be whatever. And then instead of renting it out to a group of people, think about renting it out to a group of individuals. What you can charge per night for an individual person staying, times maybe 5 individuals, you can literally be looking at a 200% to 300% increase in revenue based on doing it that way. And you're going to have people that are just going to love it. You'll have much less vacancy, never be 100% vacant. And when you're full, like, things are pretty good. So I think you can think about that with the cabin in the woods. You can think about that if you've got an RV kicking around and, maybe the market's getting a little bit saturated in terms of families booking them or groups of friends booking them. Maybe think about creating a listing on Bunking where you're connecting like-minded people to rent out the RV.
That's a great idea. And that even speaks from, obviously do marketing from that perspective of find a way to differentiate yourself. There are a lot of cabins, but is there a cabin that's focused on video games? No, like you don't hear about that. And it's something that's cool. And if you've got the location and you've got the space, why not just appeal to that group? Because that is a large group. And if you find those pockets and those interest groups that you can appeal to and theme your space around that, I think that'll, again, as you said, it'll be easy to market the place, easy to figure out who your customer is and who are the people you're trying to appeal to. And overall, it just makes the travel experience, the booking, and ultimately, the owner and the guests all happy with the experience that they're getting. So I think that's a really great suggestion for just anybody out there thinking about that, to theme your space, figure out who your customer is, and figure out how you can appeal to this next generation of solo travelers.
Yeah, and pick something you're passionate about or something that you're already living. Maybe it's fly fishing. Maybe it's, Golden Girls living. So it's like ladies 60 plus. Who knows? There's all these things. And, I'm on a lot of Airbnb different groups, and you hear, people struggling to rent their places out or struggling with rates. And, a lot of that was really interesting, like maybe 6, 8, 10 years ago, where it was new and it was unique, but now it's kind of commoditized, right? So people are looking at it and they're looking at the price and how do you differentiate from price, create an experience. And I think that's what bunking allows you to do.
Steve, as we close up, how can people contact you or, figure out more about the platform and dive on? And do you have any sort of final thoughts for people out there about the platform and where you guys might be going over this next year?
Bunking.com is the best place to find us. If you're on the platform, we're in beta. We've been in beta for 3 months. We think it'll be about another 2 or 3 months. So right now it's just a lot about getting feedback from users. And the more negative the feedback for us, the better, because we want to create the best platform out there. So that would be very much appreciated. And I'm on LinkedIn. Our website is stevencody.com as well. So any feedback, would love to hear it and would love to see everybody bunking.
Steve, thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Outdoor Alliances podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode with Steve. Subscribe for more guest conversations and weekly marketing episodes delivered every Monday and Friday, wherever you listen to podcasts. I'll talk to you soon.